predators who caught their partner cheating. Did you give them a second chance? Story 1. We went to a Halloween party at a friend's place. I'd known she's had a bit of a crush on one guy who was to attend. At one point late in the night she was quite drunk. She lined up at the washroom immediately after he went in. I kept a bit of an eye on her, and when the bathroom door opened, she went in but he didn't come out. I stood at the door and waited. When it opened and he stumbled out, I immediately went in and confronted her about it. I'm proud of myself for not committing murder that night. Story 2. I didn't catch him. He called me the next morning crying and told me everything. I respected his honesty, recognized his remorse, and truly believed it would never happen again, so I decided to forgive him. But after he cheated, he became incredibly paranoid. He started checking my phone, accusing me of revenge freaking people behind his back. Even got mad when I was assigned to work with a man on a group project in school. I couldn't stand by the fact that he was the one who'd cheated and I was the one being punished. I had really forgiven him. I wasn't holding his mistake over his head, and my attitude toward him didn't change after the fact at all, but he was driving me away more and more every day. After about a month of this, I broke up with him and he completely lost it. Story 3. I met my future husband when I was 15 years old. By the time I was 20, we were married and I was pregnant with my first child. At 22, I gave birth to our second child, and that's when things changed. Suddenly, he was never home. He would leave the house to pick up milk and return at 5 a.m. He was drinking so heavily that most mornings he'd wake up in a panic wondering where he'd left his car, only to find it in the driveway. Luckily, he never killed anyone driving home while blackout drunk. My husband had wanted to be a writer, so I would constantly find half-written stories or story outlines in these hardcover journals. He left them everywhere and I'd pick them up and pile them on his desk. One night I'm getting ready to go host a party for my father's 50th birthday. The hall was booked and I had already decorated. We were expecting about 80 guests. I was quickly trying to get ready and out the door, as I had to be there before guests started arriving. But I could not find my pantyhose anywhere. While rummaging through our dresser drawers, I found them, along with another one of his hardcover journals. I open it up and scan a page, wondering why this particular book was stashed in a drawer. As I read what was on the pages, my entire world was crashing down on me. Not only was my husband an alcoholic, he also had a pretty serious coke addiction. Then the worst part hit me. He was having an affair with my best friend. She was my maid of honor, my best friend since we were 10 years old. I ran to the washroom and threw up. I just couldn't handle the information I'd just gotten. I quickly finished getting ready and left the house. I hosted that party that night, with both my husband and my best friend in attendance, and did so with a smile on my face. It was a tough night, but I survived. We've since gotten divorced and I no longer have contact with either of them. TLDR: got married, had kids, husband cheated with my best friend. Edit: this was many years ago. While I did get married and have children young, I wouldn't change anything. My children are now 17 and 18 years old. They are happy, healthy, and well-adjusted. We've lived a good life together and have an incredible bond. My ex-husband wasn't a bad person, quite the opposite actually, but addiction makes good people do bad things. He's still an addict today and isn't much a part of our lives. Edit 2. At the end of the party, when my best friend leaned in to give me a hug, I whispered in her ear something like, "It was a long time ago. I know what you did with husband's name. Don't ever speak to me again." When I confronted him about the journal the next day, he did the typical thing and tried to turn me into the bad guy for reading his journal. When I wouldn't accept that, he tried to say that nothing in the journal was true and that he'd made it all up. It was such a pathetic attempt at a lie. I went to her house, walked in, and told her to at least have the courtesy to tell me the truth since he was still lying. She admitted it and then said to stop acting like I was so perfect and never made any mistakes in my life. It took everything I had to not kill her right there, but why let either of them ruin my life any more than they'd already tried? Once she admitted it, he had no choice. Thanks for all the positive thoughts and well wishes. Story 4. He was my first proper boyfriend, and in hindsight he was a pretty crappy boyfriend. But at the time I thought the sun shone out of his arse, so I was crushed when out of the blue he dumped me, with no reason. A week later, a group of his friends who'd taken a liking to me contacted me with the real reason for our breakup. Because apparently they'd seen what was happening, and they were sick of his crap. Basically, he'd been seeing another girl behind my back, and when she found out about me, she refused to sleep with him. So he dumped me in the hopes he'd get into her pants. She inevitably told him to get lost, at which point he tried getting back with me. I did not take him back. Story 5. I found out while I was deployed. The guy she cheated on me with emailed me and told me everything. Every detail. He apologized and told me he had no idea we were together. I put a hole in the wall, went to smoke an entire pack at the smoke pit, Went back to my laptop, and I thanked the guy. Story 6. My girlfriend was out with a friend, we'll call her Susan, on a girls' night until all hours, and told me she was staying at Susan's place for the night. The next time I see Susan, she pulled me aside and told me that they actually went to the house of a guy my girlfriend worked with, we'll call him Patrick, because that's his name. Susan goes on to tell me that she woke up in the middle of the night and found my girlfriend having intercourse with Patrick on the couch, while Patrick's girlfriend was asleep in the bedroom. I thanked her for letting me know, then went home and told my GF to pack her crap. Story 7. My ex-wife and I were together for 6 years, married 2.5 of them. She worked in a hospital and started getting a little too buddy-buddy with a doctor. I confronted her about it and she assured me his was just a friend and tried to make me sound crazy. She even had this idea and she could trick me into being friends with him so that she could be with him without me being suspicious. I did everything I could to get her to talk to me, but she never would. It's a very long, sad, and messed up tale. Eventually, all her lies started making less and less sense. I found a program that would decipher text messages, picture messages from an iTunes backup of her iPhone. It had all the evidence I needed. I still can't shake all the texts, images, and general disrespect of our marriage and family. We have a 2-year-old together that I discovered. This was a little over a year ago and I still have bouts of serious depression over it. The day I found it, I texted the picture he had sent of his junk to both him and her. She came home sobbing and trying her best to convince me to try our marriage again. I could never trust her again, nor did I want to try. But for a while I thought that maybe I should give it a chance. That was a waste of a couple months of my life. She refused to change jobs or stop contacting him, even with the threat of losing her family looming over her head. I made the hardest decision of my life, that it would be better for my daughter to grow up in 2 separate homes where she didn't need to witness her parents constantly fighting or in tears. I share 50/50 custody of her with my ex-wife, which saddens me deeply because I can't see her as much as I want. But it's better than her growing up in a household of lies and deceit. Throughout the ordeal, I lost 30 pounds from constant stress and depression. I learned that people don't change. Selfish people will always be selfish people. I did, however, receive the amazing gift of a child from it all though, and I would never change that. As of 2 weeks ago, I'm officially single, bought my first home, and actually woke up not wanting to take my own life. So I got that going for me, which is nice. Story 8. I was deployed to Iraq and my wife was being distant for a few weeks. During my deployment, she mentioned several times in phone calls this contractor she was working with and how much they click and all. I trusted her and never thought she was cheating, but I joked about it and we laughed it off. I even met the guy while home on leave and he shook my hand thanking me for my service. A month later, back in Iraq from leave, one particular night I couldn't get a hold of her. I called and no answer. I am very much a trust my gut type of guy and I had a sinking sickly feeling of something was up. I never was one of checking or sneaking into her accounts, but we shared passwords with each other. I decided to check her Facebook account. There was nothing in her inbox, but there was one lonely message in her outbox she didn't delete to the contractor guy she worked with. I will always love you. That was when my world came crashing down. Shortly afterwards, she finally calls me back, not knowing I know, and she confesses she is pregnant with his baby. I couldn't get a hold of her because she was with her mom confessing what she had done that night, but I remember punching a wall and straining or broke my thumb and leaving my barracks knocking over a porta potty. Thankfully nobody was in it. There was a month or two before I was to be home and we tried working it out being distant. Once I got home I decided to give it another a chance. She told me she would stop talking to him and request him to be removed from her project. I met her at her office one day for lunch and she wasn't in her office yet. While waiting for her I saw she had her email pulled up ... but not her usual email. Turns out she had a secret email account with him. After that I was done and out. TLDR wife got knocked up while I was in Iraq and found out through Facebook. Edit words. Hey guys, don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to help out the channel. But first, a word from our sponsor, Light Gallery. It's a game changer when it comes to illuminating your living space. If you're looking to add a touch of creativity to your home, this is the perfect solution. They offer a varied collection of high-quality illuminating objects. The last couple of days I had the chance to try out their realistic moon lamp. I have to say that my room caught a new feeling. And not only this, but this lamp is shown to improve focus, which was really important for creating awesome stories for you. Light Gallery offered 15% off if you use the code CARL7. But hurry, it's only for the next 72 hours. Thank you so much, Light Gallery, for sponsoring this video. And let's get back to the stories. Story 9. The one thing some people don't know is that there can be layers to unravel when your SO is cheating. My doubt started when I took my SO's phone on accident, unlocked it, and bam, texts that were pretty inappropriate. I confronted her about it and she tried to talk her way out of it. But they were just texts, so I told her to just stop doing it and everything would be fine. Unfortunately, I found out a pretty annoying way. I was chilling at home and I get a message from a really good friend if I wanted to go laser tag. We are in college. It's what boring college kids do. I decline and just go about my evening. The next day I am talking to that exact friend and he lets me know that my SO and this other guy that everyone also knew, the guy she was ending the texts to, were being a little bit too close. I confront her and bingo, she was cheating on me. Ended soon after that. I am 99% sure she will see this, but she still talks to some friends of mine from time to time. And hearing about how much hell she is going through, and how miserable she is just makes me feel so much better. Her getting out of my life was the best thing to happen to me. The intercourse was not great either. Story 10. Surprise visit from out of town, she's not home. Well, it was a surprise and I wasn't sure of her plans for the evening, so I go to my mom's house to wait a while. A few hours later I go back to my GF's apartment, but she's still not there. On a hunch I drive by her friend's place and sure enough her car is there. I get an uncomfortable feeling about it, but try not to worry. So I go back to my mom's place to get some sleep. Up early, I go over to GF's again. Not there. Drive around the block. She's still at Fricknugget's place. I never like that pos. At this point I'm pissed. I go back to my mom's and call my GF's home phone. The message was something like I came into town last night and we need to talk. A few hours later she rings the doorbell and we go upstairs to talk. She confesses that she cheated. I was in love with this woman, so I accepted her apology and gave her another chance. We stayed together for a few months, but I came to realize I couldn't forgive her so easily, especially since she was still hanging around that guy. So we broke up. The end. Story 11. I had been dating a guy for a few months. We didn't have a title on it, but a couple months before the incident we had decided that we had no interest in seeing others and were exclusive. He decides he wants to buy an iPad, and a few days later I asked if I could see it to see what apps he had, and if there were any I might like to put on my own. I notice an app called Meet Me that has around 5 or 6 notifications on it. I honestly had no idea what it was, so I opened it. It went straight to his inbox, which was full of messages from other women. Just as I saw that, he asked if I was ready to go to the grocery store, so I left it there. He could tell something was up at the grocery store, but I didn't bring it up in public, obviously. Get back to his place, and I open up the app again. I said, "What's this app on here called Meet Me? I've never heard of that before." He said, "Oh, it's just a social networking site, kind of like Facebook. It's really big with my friends from up in Oregon." So I open a message that says something like, "Hey girl, when are you gonna come see me so I can play with your chest?" Or something along those lines. I said, "Oh, so this blonde girl Shelly is gonna fly in all the way from Oregon so you can play with her chest. How sweet of her." Then we get into a huge fight, with him mostly claiming that I'm not his girlfriend so he can still do things with other girls, seemingly forgetting about the exclusivity talk. It ends with him confessing that he did it because he's in love with me and those strong feelings scared him so he turned to other women, but he had never actually met up with any of them. He also cried, so that was cool. I gave him another chance, but we crashed and burned not too long afterwards cause I couldn't trust his sketchy butt. Story 12. My ex just started grad school after being out of undergrad for about 2 years. We had been going out for nearly a year. She would introduce me to a lot of her classmates and stuff and we'd start to hang out with some of them. The people she had made the best friends with were guys, which I didn't have too much of a problem with. Most of them seemed cool. One of the guys she was probably the closest with and she started talking about this guy all the time. He had just gotten married a couple months prior, I guess. I met him a couple times, and he seemed a hint of douchey, but whatever. A couple weeks go by and she's just starting to act different. It's our anniversary weekend and I have dinner plans for us, get a nice card, all that kind of stuff. She has to cancel on me last minute because she has to study. That weekend I stay at her apartment because I needed to do something downtown the next day and I was not living around there. She had to go to her parents' house for some reason. She left her laptop and I took it to go on Gmail. Her Gmail was logged in and I know I really shouldn't have done it, but I started to poke around just a little. I felt terrible while doing it, but I could feel some distance between us and she wouldn't talk to me about whatever it was. She had deleted the majority of her GChat conversations, but must have overlooked one of them. It was a quite obscene convo with that married guy about what they had done that weekend and many other times before that. So I took the card I had gotten her, wrote "frick you" over all the words telling her how I had loved her, and set it on her computer with that conversation still open, and left. Story 13. My first boyfriend cheated on me with his ex at least twice, but I didn't actually find out until years after we broke up. He and I got together for drinks and to catch up, and I just flat out asked him if he'd slept with her. He couldn't answer me, and that was answer enough. Looking back, I knew in the back of my mind something was up, and I should have accepted that and moved on sooner. The paintings she did of him, the way he'd disappear for days after seeing her. Hell, he drove to my school in her car to tell me we should take a break. Ugh, it makes me angry to think about how naive I was. I was trying to be the cool girlfriend who didn't mind her boyfriend hanging out with his ex because they were just friends. Story 14. Didn't cheat myself, but busted a guy accidentally. Was at a dinner party when this vaguely familiar guy walks in with his smoking hot so. We are introduced and I said that we had actually met before. It basically went like this: yes, we've met before. No, I don't think so. Sure, you went to X university, right? Yeah, you used to date my old neighbor, Jenna. No, no. That wasn't me. Sure it was. You transferred from Y University and played basketball. We had a couple of chats because you know Tim and Ed. At this point his so is seething and storms out of the house. He gives me a "wow did you just frick me" look and heads out after her. Turns out he was cheating with my neighbor for years. She always suspected, but never had any proof. Until I came along. Story 15. I had been married to her for about 7 months when she got a new job, her first real job out of college. After a couple of months, she started talking sporadically about this guy at work who was funny, cool, etc. I'm not jealous, nor did I have any reason to doubt her. However, I did notice that all of a sudden she is a huge texter, which she hadn't been prior. Texting all of the time, and doing so sneakily. One day she asks if I would be okay with her hanging out with him outside of work. Same thing, I'm not controlling and I trusted her. They continue to hang out occasionally. The texting continues, all while my stress level is skyrocketing. I break down and begin checking her texts whenever I get the opportunity. Things seem fishy, but I never see anything definitive. I get to the point where it's clear something is going wrong with our relationship. She is very much distant, clearly sneaky, and getting caught in dumb lies. I eventually confront her about it and she adamantly denies that anything is going on, saying that she needed that friendship as an outlet to feel independent. I wanted to believe her, but got more and more suspicious. I nearly became obsessive with checking her email, Facebook, and texts, which I hated doing the whole time. But unless you've been in the same position, you can't really understand the draw of being able to access that info. My findings grew more and more suspicious, but I still never saw the definitive proof that there was anything more than flirting going on. Hindsight is 20/20. Where there's smoke, there's fire. One day she comes home from hanging out with him and I notice stubble rash on her chest. That was the definitive proof I needed. I point this out, she turns bright red, and I walk out the door. We had a long talk the next day, and I ultimately decided I could forgive her and work through this, provided she cut off all contact with him and agreed to work on things. She was still reluctant to remove him from her life. I still had the feeling that she was meeting up with him behind my back and got confirmation of this in an anonymous letter in my work mailbox from a coworker of ours, saying she saw her and this guy out in public being far too frisky. I moved out for good after that. Lesson learned. If you're suspicious, with reason, there's something wrong, whether or not your partner has had a physical affair. What they're doing is causing distress for you, and if they aren't willing to resolve that, they're up to no good. I guess I say this with a grain of salt, because some control freak would ruin this generalization.